Okay, Tanya, I've got 3 Eastern. Is it okay if I go ahead and get this party
Yeah,
started
go ahead.
officially?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
All right, awesome. Well, good afternoon, everybody. And if you're watching this as a recording, I hope you're having a good day no matter when and where you are. We are here to talk about how to demystify LinkedIn for social impact leaders. That's right. We're going to be breaking down all the ins and outs of LinkedIn so that it can help with your personal brand. This is a really cool topic. I'm excited for this one. Thank you so much for being here. It is always good to see a full room, especially this time of year. It seems like there's a lot going on with maybe spring events. So thank you all for being here. I'm Steven. I'm over here at Boomerang, and I'll be moderating today's discussion as always. And just a couple of housekeeping items before we get going. Just want to let you all know that we are recording this session, and we'll be sending out the recording as well as the slides later on today. Might be tomorrow morning, but you'll get them here real soon after we conclude here. So if you have to leave early or maybe get interrupted, you got another appointment, no problem. We will get all that good stuff to you later on, and it'll be shareable if you want to maybe send it off to a friend or a colleague as well. But most importantly, we love for these sessions to be interactive. So send in your questions and comments. There's a chat box and a Q&A box. You can use either of those. If you have a specific question, it might be a little more visible in the Q&A box, but we'd love to hear from you either way. So don't be shy. We're going to save a little bit of time at the end for Q&A. You can also send us a tweet. I'll keep an eye on that. But bottom line is we would love to hear from you over the next hour or so. And if this is your first Boomerang webinar, welcome. We do these webinars just about every Thursday throughout the year, literally like 49 or 50 sessions. We love it. One of our favorite things we do here at Boomerang. But if you've never heard of Boomerang, if you're wondering what the heck that is, we are a donor management software. So we're a donor database provider. If you're interested in that, check us out. We're pretty easy to find online. You can go to our website, get a demo, watch videos, learn all about us. But don't do that right now, because dang, I have had this date circled on my calendar for many, many months, been looking forward to this one. And we are super honored and excited to have Tanya Bhattacharya joining us from beautiful Southern California. Tanya, how you doing? You doing okay?
Doing fabulous. Such a great day. I've had this circled on my calendar forever too. I can't wait I'm so excited to be here with you guys.
Yeah, this is great. Tanya is like the best person to talk about this topic because I spend a little bit of time on LinkedIn, and all the time I would see these posts from Tanya and all these other people that I knew sharing her posts and her advice. And I watch her videos, and her name was like, dang, she's really smart, but she is all over LinkedIn. I got to know her. And when she said, hey, I could talk about this, I thought, this is great. So you all are really in for a treat. And one of my other favorite things about Tanya is she's been in your shoes. She's been an ED. She's a fundraiser. She raised over $8 million. Actually, she just got back from a fundraising event right before this. So we appreciate her filling in. And you're going to want to follow her afterward. Check her out at Lumos Marketing. She helps with personal branding for folks like you. So if that is something maybe you need some help with, I do hope you'll reach out to Tanya afterwards. And I think you're going to want to after hearing her speak. So you want to hear her speak, and I do too. So I'm going to pipe down. So Tanya, I'm going to stop sharing my slides here. I'll let you bring up your slide deck, and then the floor is yours, my friend.
Perfect. That sounds great. And Stephen, one of the things that I thought you were going to say was one of my favorite things about Tanya is we have we have the same favorite TV show, which happens to be Attack on Titan. We love that show, and we geek out about it together after every Sunday when it's on. So so welcome everyone, and thank you for that beautiful introduction. As Stephen said, my name is Tanya Bhattacharya. This is what we're going to be talking about today. You know, I want to talk a little bit more about who I am. I want to really cover some myths and facts that surround LinkedIn. There's a lot of interesting mindset stuff sometimes that people come to me and say, I can't use LinkedIn because of this. I can't use LinkedIn because of that. And I really want to talk about those kinds of things. I want to talk about why LinkedIn, because we all have all kinds of channels that we can use, right? TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Clubhouse. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. But why LinkedIn, you know? And then we're going to get more into the meat and the nitty gritty of things. What makes a strong LinkedIn profile? If you had, 30 minutes, if you had 45 minutes or an hour to spend, because I know you're all busy, you're meeting with donors, you're working on appeal letters, you're doing community-centered work. You don't have a lot of time to just be sitting on LinkedIn trying to figure it out. So we're going to talk about what goes into a strong profile, and then how to actually use LinkedIn to find those aligned allies, ambassadors, potential donors, how to steward the donors you already have, how to find potential board members. LinkedIn is a great place for all of that. And then lastly, I'm going to give you a couple of examples of thought leadership content, really personal brand content that converts. And when I say converts, I just mean turning people who happen to find our profile into friends and then turning them into fans, meaning they become donors, they become active participants in your mission. So that's what we're going to kind of chat about today. And then this is, my bio, and Stephen had it up on the screen. I'm certainly not going to read it. I would prefer to actually tell you kind of more of my story. So as Stephen said, I've been in your shoes. I grew up in the nonprofit community, first fundraising for my alma mater, UC Irvine, and then working for a nonprofit addiction treatment center for 12 years. And eventually, in that 12 years, I became the executive director, but it left in 2020 to really start this movement, this thing that I do now around helping nonprofit social impact leaders really become thought leaders and stand out as they stand up for their mission. But during those 12 years, I realized something, and you've probably had this inkling too, like competition doesn't exist. Competition is a myth because our universe is totally abundant with donors, clients, ambassadors, sponsors, referral sources, any type of audience that you want to grow. Like other nonprofits are not our competitors. If anything, they can make us stronger and help us raise more money, right? By being in community. Instead, I think the real competition is noise, right? It's distraction. It's a chaotic world that's getting more chaotic by the day. And so I think the real challenge for us as fundraisers, as nonprofit professionals, as social impact leaders is obscurity and figuring out how to stand out and build trust and community as we imagine and shape the future together for the better. And so if you've been chugging away at your mission and pouring yourself into the community you serve, I know personally how difficult and frustrating it can feel sometimes to feel like invisible, or at least like the best kept secret, right? And I believe that thought leadership and building a strong personal brand to position ourselves as kind of that go-to trusted voice I think that's the solution. And LinkedIn is the space to do that. And I also know that sometimes it can feel weird to get visible, post on LinkedIn, talk about like a vulnerable story, because maybe it feels like you're stealing the limelight from your organization. Like, maybe it feels like that. I don't want to speak for you, but I think sometimes that's what stops us. But one thing I know for sure, like something that Oprah says, one thing I know for sure, right, is that when you get in the limelight on LinkedIn, that light reflects back onto your mission. And I know that because I used to ghostwrite LinkedIn content for our leadership at that nonprofit. And I would grumble about it because I had plenty to do. Like I could have been spending that time doing like frontline fundraising. I could have done a bunch of different things. But I noticed after about 3 to 6 months of like her getting visible on LinkedIn, consistently posting, and consistently, I just mean like once per week, right? Engaging with people virtually, that she was also, in community with in real life, stuff started to happen. Like it was kind of magical. Like people would approach her at conferences. This was back when we still had conferences, right? This was pre-COVID, but people would approach her and ask her questions about her unique ideas. They were like, I read your post. What do you think about X, Y, and Z? Can we talk about this, right? Reporters and people who had podcasts came out of the woodwork to interview her as a subject matter expert. We started attracting board members and champions and investors in a way that felt really magical. It felt like serendipitous. And more than anything, I didn't have to worry so much about where that next influx of donations or resources was going to come from because it was just happening. Like we were just attracting a sustainable stream of interested people that we could then cultivate into supporters instead of having to like go and like knock on doors and such. And so, like I said, we have so many options to communicate our message from, TikTok, Instagram, all of them. But I want to talk about, well, hold on. Am I there yet? Let me see. No, okay. I'm not there yet. I want to get a little bit of a read of the room first before we get there. I want to find out where you're at right now. So you can drop a me in the chat or just a yes in the chat, just like make some noise in the chat if this feels familiar. So maybe you're not using LinkedIn at all right now. Maybe you're using something else. Okay, James says yes. Margie says yes. So you're using something else, Instagram, whatever, to look for engaged leads. And yeah, I'm seeing a lot of yes. Amazing. And so I know as a community volunteer myself that, well, let me go to the second one. Let me go to the second one. So you have a company LinkedIn page for your nonprofit, but you aren't showing up with your personal page and your brand. So that might be, I saw earlier, yeah, LinkedIn for personal, not business. I saw someone else said yes to the second one. So what's interesting is when I'm on other platforms like Instagram, it's not that I'm not necessarily on there to look for those types of networking opportunities, right? I'm there like looking to see what my friends are up to. I want to look at dogs. I want to look at memes. I want to post like the yummy dinner I just had. Like that's what I use Instagram for. But when I'm on LinkedIn, I have a different mindset when I'm on there. I'm looking for something different. I have an intentionality around growing my professional network, right? I want to see what other nonprofits are up to. I want to see what my professional peers are doing. I want to see what my old coworkers are doing, right? And then as far as the company LinkedIn page, I want to speak to that because it's interesting. Folks don't want to, even in the nonprofit world, folks want to know who's behind the organization. They want to know the people, the faces behind the work, right? And I want to be sure I'm clarifying, like as nonprofits, we always want to center the community we serve and we want them to be in the center, right? But I'm just saying, like, if people don't know the staff at all, it can be harder to build trust and momentum, right? Another thing here might be that you're okay getting visible on other platforms, but something stops you from posting on LinkedIn. And it's okay. Like if you're open to being vulnerable, I'd love to know if this applies to you. There's some kind of self-limiting beliefs around professionalism. Like maybe there's this feeling around, I don't know enough to post on LinkedIn. Like maybe I need to get another degree or have a few more years of experience or have more credentials next to my name because I'm not enough of an expert, right? And so you don't use it because of that, right? Another thing might be you're using LinkedIn, not really seeing engagement or results, but you sense, I think many of us, because we're here, we sense that we should be visible on there, but we're not sure how to get started. Yeah. And so when you finally find the time to open LinkedIn, you're not sure what to do. You don't know what to post. You don't know you don't know how to stand out, but you're sensing some kind of miraculous opportunity out there. And so I want to get into this just a little bit more. So this myth around, okay, I'm seeing a lot of good stuff in the chat. I don't like self-promotion. Nonprofit is so new. I don't know if it's time to engage, credentials. Yeah. We're going to get into all this kind of good stuff. Very few followers. Yeah. So let me speak really quickly about the piece around the not enough of an expert or not knowing what to post or not feeling like they have the credentials, right? There's a phrase that I love, which is the phrase around the itty bitty shitty committee, or some of us call it an inner critic, or just that voice that tells us that we don't have what it takes to get visible on LinkedIn, right? I know this is easier said than done, but trust me, because you're here in this room, because you are working hands-on in the trenches at the nonprofit that you work with the people that you serve, you do have the experience, the passion, the credibility. And I know that because true imposters don't actually get imposter syndrome. You're here because you're committed to a mission and a vision. You're committed to changing the world. And so there was a thing in the chat about not wanting to be self-promotional. And what I would say is it's a disservice to the world to not show up on a platform with plenty of people who want to help you make shift happen, who maybe have lived experience and, heartfelt stories about the thing that you're actively working on fixing in the world. And they need to, it's not self-promotion. It's giving people an opportunity to give back and be involved, right? Another myth is that LinkedIn is stuffy, right? It's boring, it's corporate, it's the place where you go to find a job. And there's some truth to this, right? But it's changed. It is changing. And much like the corporate world, just like the real world that we're in, there's been a humanization of LinkedIn. They're putting the social back in social media, and they're really investing heavily in their creator piece and different aspects of their platform to support creators. And I mean, there's definitely a professional tint to it. It's a professional social network, but you can show your human side on there for sure. And I'll show you some of examples of that. Another myth is that, you only use LinkedIn to find a job. One of the big barriers that people, some of my mentees have shared with me, they're afraid to use LinkedIn because they think their boss is going to think that they're looking for a job, or they aren't committed to their current mission because they're trying to look for other opportunities. And I can totally understand how that would be a scary thing. And what I'll say to that is when you build your personal brand, the brand of the organization benefits as a result, because you're getting, again, it's some of what I say is going to be repetitive, but I really want to reiterate, like when you get visible, your mission gets visible. When you talk, when you start engaging with different people who are interesting, they start to see you're connected to this awesome organization, and that organization, you know, gets opportunities as a result. You get RSVPs for your events, you get eyes of potential sponsors for your event, all those kinds of things. And sometimes all it takes is a sit down conversation with your supervisor and just letting them know that you are, you know, doing this work, you're getting visible on LinkedIn to further the mission of the organization. And usually that's all it takes. So really, LinkedIn is a great place to serve as, it's not a place to post your resume. It's about serving as a resource, right? Not resume. It's a place to be a resource. So let's see oh, here's some examples. Okay. So yes, LinkedIn is a professional platform, but I have seen that when I post more about like who I am, as a person, I tend to get, a lot more engagement and comments. And, you know, I'm not, so how do I want to say this? I'm not technically in the nonprofit world anymore. I do have my own company, and some might say, I've gotten this comment before, well, you have a lot more leniency. And that may or may not be true, but this is just an example of how when you show who you are, like at home, who you truly authentically are, people want to lean in and know more about that. And that's just going to lead to more professional opportunities. And so I did a post about me and my dog, when the election recently happened. I did this post here. It just says, for little girls who look like this, having a woman of color in the White House is a big deal, right? And so that's not a professional post per se, but a lot of the people who are engaging, and you can see there's thousands of views when you post more authentic, vulnerable things. People reach out to, thank you. Yep, that's my dog. That's Gary. People reach out. A conversation gets started. And I believe the start to anything exciting is always a brave conversation, right? And so anyway, so we'll talk more about that. I want to talk about why LinkedIn, like why LinkedIn when you have so many different choices of spaces. So LinkedIn has 750 million active users, and 12% of the users in the US visit it daily. And some of you might be thinking, well, Instagram has 1 billion, like other platforms have actually more than that. And that's true. But, and this is a big but, less than 3% of the people on LinkedIn actually post content regularly. And the reason that's good is it's unsaturated. And so your content has a much better chance of actually reaching people, and it lives on the feed for much longer. You'll see oftentimes when you post something, it will continue to get engagement for weeks, versus when you post something on another social media platform, it's just kind of that day, you know, those couple of days. And the other thing about this is that there's a lot of people on LinkedIn who are lurking. Oftentimes I have clients and friends who post something and they say, well, nobody liked it. Or like, nobody really, like, I'm posting, but nobody's really liking it. I would venture to say people are watching, even if they're not liking it, right? They're watching, they're internalizing, they're consuming, they're building trust, whether they like it or not. You know, I've had many instances back, even when my nonprofit days, when I would post something and it got, like, for example, I worked for a healthcare organization, addiction treatment center, and we became in network with a certain insurance company, Blue Shield. I put up a post about it, got some likes, whatever. And then I was having a coffee date with a potential donor a few weeks later. And she knew that it had internalized that. It had planted a seed. And so she asked me about it. And so I just bring that up to say, it might not seem like you're getting a ton of engagement, but people are watching. So just know that. The other great thing about LinkedIn too, let's say a donor likes your post, or a board member, let's say a board member likes your post, right? The algorithm does a really good job of showing that board member's network your post too. And so it's a really great way to meet more people who are already like the people that like you, if that makes sense. Because more than likely, those board members are connected with people who can also support your organization, who would be interested in supporting your organization, who maybe they're thinking about asking to get involved in your organization, to come volunteer. And so it's just a really nice way of being in front of them before they're actually there. And yes, and the word promote has like a negative connotation, and we can talk about that if we want. I grew up with the principles of 12-step fellowships, and there's a principle in there called like attraction versus promotion. And so I think that when we talk about the work that we're doing from a place of not necessarily promotion, but from a place of this mission that I'm working on is so incredible. I love what I get to do. I'm feeling so grateful that I get to do this work. Here's an example of something we're working on. That, to me, some people might call it promotion, and that's fine. I consider it attraction. You're attracting people who see that and think, holy smokes, that's so cool. Like, I can't believe this person had that experience. This testimonial is so beautiful. I would need to know more about this, right? So that's the way I think about it, right? So other things about LinkedIn, right? It tends to be an audience. The audience that is on LinkedIn tends to be an audience that can invest in that can make philanthropic contributions, right? Over 49% of internet users who make over 75K per year use LinkedIn. And even beyond that, LinkedIn's a trusted brand in and of itself, right? It has been rated the #1 most trusted social media platform. We all know about like the stuff that Facebook has been doing. And even beyond that, the platform is not used to find romantic partners. It's not used for many of the other things that other platforms are, in addition to trying to build up our professional networks. LinkedIn is just about building up our professional networks and our thought leadership. So that can be helpful. And sometimes, professionals will use LinkedIn as a search engine, right? They'll type what they're looking for right in there. And so by using the right keywords in your profile, people can find you in a way that they can't necessarily on other platforms. A little extra thing that I was talking to Stephen about earlier, I just learned this yesterday. Like, I just put two and two about this together yesterday. So LinkedIn gets its revenue. LinkedIn gets paid from people paying for its premier paid memberships. I'm not saying you need a paid membership. You don't actually need one, but that's how they get paid, right? But many other platforms, including Facebook, they get their revenue from ads. And so it actually sometimes behooves them to promote more like controversial content, salacious content. They want people to get into these like tizzies. Versus LinkedIn wants to keep its professional networking members happy, right? And so it's just a different vibe on LinkedIn. It's a different concept, and one that kind of lends itself better to the work that we do, to social impact work. Last thing before we get off this page is that LinkedIn is actually in many ways your personal digital professional homepage. So if you Google yourself, oftentimes your LinkedIn is one of the first things to come up about you. Definitely on the first page, if not the very, very first thing. So as your thought leadership efforts snowball, as your brand gets out there, as you continue doing good work, people are going to Google you, right? People are going to Google you, and you want a strong LinkedIn profile for when that happens. I actually did a poll where I said, okay, what's the first thing that pops up when you Google yourself? And 120 people participated in this poll. And the vast majority actually said, yeah, it's their personal LinkedIn profile. So that might be something you want to try after this session. My guess is that it's going to come up pretty high on there. And so that being said, LinkedIn is continuing to change since it's continuing to change, right? You can do lives on there, just like on Instagram. You can do LinkedIn lives. You can do newsletters, which is a cool thing because when people sign up for your newsletter, it automatically gets emailed to them. So that's pretty cool. There's just been an overall investment in creators on there. You can do polls like the one I just showed you. You can also, there's LinkedIn events, carousel posts, and LinkedIn audio actually just came out. So if any of you are familiar with Clubhouse, it's the same kind of thing. So you can host audio specific rooms on LinkedIn. So that has not rolled out to every single user yet, but over the next couple of months, they are rolling out to everyone. So I'm kind of going fast because I want to go into like the meat and potatoes of this presentation. So this is so your profile is really important. And so like Will asked, what are your suggestions for setting up a LinkedIn from scratch? So if you have, I know you're all busy, right? So if you have like an hour, let's say 90 minutes, if you have 90 minutes to kind of devote to setting up your LinkedIn profile from scratch, these would be the things that I would really focus on, right? So headshot is important. We are, as humans, like it's just people are going to look at your profile picture and make all kinds of, assessments. That's just how humans are. It's like a first impression is what I'm trying to say. Your headshot is kind of like a first impression. So is it current? Is it professional? Is it high resolution? I would recommend that it's just you in the picture. And these days, we all have smartphones. You could just have a friend take a photo of you, but I would definitely take some time to get a good, clear headshot of you, right? And then the cover photo. So this is something that didn't when you all, many of us, like when we graduated college, we slapped up a LinkedIn and we were like, okay, we have LinkedIn now. And then we never looked at it again. So this is a somewhat newer thing. This is the banner that shows up at the very top of your LinkedIn. And by default, it's just like a light blue background and it's just blank. But you can actually use Canva to develop a cover photo way better than the default. So if any of you use Canva, Canva is free. You can just create a free account on Canva, search for LinkedIn cover photo to get the right dimensions. Yeah, Canva is amazing. So just search for LinkedIn cover photo and it will give you like pages and pages and pages of examples that you can totally customize. You can have a photo of you in action speaking at an event. If you're a grant writer, actually, I saw it was really cute. It was a grant writer who was literally just like, she had a magnifying glass in one hand and she was like writing with the other hand. And that says something, right? It tells a story about what she does. Pictures of you volunteering in the field, maybe your favorite inspirational quote, all kinds of things like that. So that is a space where you can also have a good first impression right off the bat. Now your headline. So let's talk about your headline. So by default, when you create a LinkedIn, it's gonna put your job title and company. So even if you do nothing else, it's gonna have your job title and company, like Director of Development at ABC nonprofit. But this is fully editable. So instead of your title, I recommend that you list what you do, right? So one of my friends, Mara, is a executive director, but on there she has like mental health change maker. And so she had executive director of Extraordinary Lives Foundation, which is her company, her nonprofit. People don't always know what that is, like right off the bat, right? So like put what you do. My other friend Amy is she started a technology firm that helps people, that like connects. Anyway, what she has on her title is she uses technology to help social workers book patients into vetted treatment centers in minutes, right? And so it's just a very quick, like, this is what you do. And the thing about your headline is when you leave comments on other people's posts, that will show up. And so I've had people reach out to me just from a comment that I've made, right? And I'm seeing a lot of great questions in the chat. And I think and just in case, I would recommend putting your questions in the Q&A because I think we're gonna have Q&A time at the end. And if you put it in the chat, it might get lost. I can see right now, this one around the cover photo. What if it's a pattern or image? Okay, so what I wanna say is you can't do this wrong, right? Just using LinkedIn, you have a step up above everyone else. And I think it's totally fine to have it be a pattern or an image, I think that's totally fine. I would just want you to make sure to use an image that has something to do with your work, right? So if you work for an animal shelter, maybe have a bunch of pictures of animals, right? Cute, cuddly animals. Like that would be an amazing first impression, right? If you work for a nonprofit like garden or library, have a picture of your campus. If you work for a beautiful campus, that's a great place to feature that. So, and my personal opinion is that you should always reflect the true sense of who you are as a person, because that is what makes people want to reach out to us and say, tell me more about you. I think when we err on the side of having like the super professional, like black suit, kind of really, really professional headshot, it doesn't help you stand out. it doesn't help you stand out. But if you have like a purple suit because your organization, that's their favorite color, or whatever makes you feel most yourself, right? Or maybe it's a professional picture of you, but you're holding your dog, or you are, something else that speaks to who you are, or maybe even the work that you do. So yeah. So the about section. So the about section is a really important section because that's where you get to tell your story. That's where you get to showcase. If any of you are fans of StoryBrand, StoryBrand is a really great resource. And that's where I really learned, like, you want to position yourself as the guide, right? You aren't the hero of the story of your nonprofit. You're the guide. So you're the Dumbledore, not Harry Potter, right? You are Yoda. You're not Luke Skywalker. You have gone through a journey to become the guide, right? And many of us have lived experience, or maybe our families have lived experience, or there's something that made us passionate about the organization that we now work for, right? There's a story there. And so you can allude to that story, right? But you can also showcase some of your accomplishments. You can talk about maybe a turning point in your life where you realize that this is the work that you're meant to do, if that's your story, right? And you have about 2,000 words here to play with. So you can get creative here, right? And my kind of logistical advice is to break it up with plenty of white space so that it's visually easy to read. But really, I would encourage you to tell parts of your story here. Many people, it just looks like they copied and pasted their resume and put it into their LinkedIn. And again, a LinkedIn is not about a resume, it's about being a resource for the people that you serve. So what is it about your story that positions you as the guide? I would invite you to meditate, to marinate on that question and incorporate those answers into your about section. And then there's a featured section. So the featured section is relatively new as well. Like if you started a LinkedIn 5 years ago and just kind of let it sit there, featured is new, right? And that's a place that's prime real estate where you can really feature some of your content that effectively demonstrates who you are, your thought leadership, what you are about. So I would recommend that first, and you can actually put links here. You can put links here, videos, LinkedIn posts, you can put all kinds of stuff here. And so I'd recommend that the first link in your featured section is your nonprofit's website, because that way, if somebody finds you on LinkedIn, they can immediately go to your website and learn more about the mission that you represent. Another thing you could put here is maybe if you have been interviewed on a podcast, or maybe if you've done a featured blog, or if you've got an op-ed featured, or any kind of thought leadership content would be a great thing to feature here. A YouTube video, right? And it doesn't, here, I would say it doesn't even necessarily have to just be your stuff. You could feature a testimonial from one of the donors or the patients or the clients that you serve, that could go there as well. And so to do any of that, just go to your LinkedIn profile and select the pencil icon or edit, and then you can, you'll see a featured section, and that's what you can do there. So asking for recommendations is also, I would say, like, again, and this is like if you have like an hour or like 90 minutes, there's more stuff you can do, but I don't want to overwhelm you, right? If you do these things, I feel like you are like way, way, way ahead of the game, and like you're doing great. But recommendations are one step above from like skills and endorsements, and they're kind of like a testimonial about you. There are a few sentences that other people write about you that live on your profile, kind of like a very short recommendation letter, like kind of like if you're applying to school, you ask people for recommendation letters. This is that. So I would think about who in your professional life would you ask for a recommendation letter if you were applying for a new opportunity, or let's say you wanted to go for like a big speaking opportunity or TEDx talk or like do something great. Who would you ask for a recommendation? And then you can simply reach out to them and ask if they'd be willing to leave you a recommendation, and just give them your LinkedIn profile. There's a place on your LinkedIn profile where you can leave people recommendations, so they should be able to see it. Or if you go to your LinkedIn profile and scroll down to the recommendation section, there will be a place that says something like ask contacts for recommendations, something like that. And then you can actually ask for them directly there, and LinkedIn will send them a message and say, Tanya Hansen asked you for a recommendation. And then you can you can actually write a little like personalized note as well in there. So, Yeah, so I'd encourage you to do that. And of course, offer to write one in return if appropriate. But some of the people you could ask are even donors who you have like a really good relationship with, sponsors who always support your event, volunteers. I mean, I don't have to tell you, I'm speaking to the choir. You're all expert relationship builders. So you know who to ask. And actually, no, it doesn't have to be just direct coworkers. It can be people from college, old professors, anybody who can speak to your character and who you are as a person, and share a couple sentences about what it was like working with you, right? And I would think about what side of you do you want to really highlight on your LinkedIn? Like if you work with a lot of corporate sponsors, you might want to ask some corporate sponsors who had a really good experience with you, because then other corporate sponsors are going to see that these other people said, "Oh, David was so great to work with. Like he was so on it whenever I had a request, as we were sponsoring their big event. They really, like he really thought of ways to to highlight my organization in ways that I didn't even think of. Like I would encourage anybody to work with David, stuff like that." So I would think about those kinds of questions. So there's more than you can do, right? But I would do these things first. So let's move on. So, there's a lot of words on these slides. So I don't want to read from this, but we talked about, I kind of break this down into like self, search, and share. So we talked about self. So creating your profile. When it comes to search, LinkedIn is one of the most amazing tools in my toolkit that I had when I was a frontline fundraiser. Like it's just great. So I would say some things that you can do right off the bat when you're on LinkedIn is start with the low hanging fruit, right? Check Bloomerang, right? Check your CRM, like who's in there, like who are your current supporters, who are your current donors, your board members, who's sitting on a committee, right? Past supporters, people in your donor pipeline, come up with that list of people who you are like actively working with, even, competitors. And I put that in quotes because, I don't believe in competition, but who are other nonprofits that do similar work to you in your community? Who are your vendors? Like who's your IT company? Who's your HR company? Who does your benefits? Who does your payroll, right? Make this long list and start adding them on LinkedIn. Send them a personalized connection request that just says, "Hey, I can't believe we're not connected here on LinkedIn yet. We work together all the time. I'm so excited to stay in touch with all of the work that you do here on LinkedIn," something like that. And no, company LinkedIns can't follow other company profiles. And that's why I love the personal profile. You can be a lot more agile. You can be a lot more flexible. Everything that I do is really kind of like, personal brand, personal profile kind of thing. But that being said, I want to show you my super cool trick around LinkedIn. I use this all the time when we were looking for new board members. So I'm just going to pop into LinkedIn. And so this is my cool tool. So the search functionality is really, really fabulous. So I used to work for an addiction treatment center, like, and so let me just search for like therapist. That would be somebody that I would want on our board. And you might have done your governance committee might have done a board audit and realized you have gaps in certain areas. Like maybe you really need more attorneys. Maybe you really need more people in construction. Maybe you really need more people who do like estate planning. There's some kind of gap that you've probably identified that you want more of that talent on your board or on your committees. And so search for that thing, right? So I just put in therapist, like that's just the first thing that came to my mind. But then you can actually use the filters to do a really cool thing. Let me show you this. So you can actually, I live in the LA metropolitan area. You can select whatever you want, but there's a tool here which says open to. So this blew my mind when I realized this. There's a space where you can select people that are open to either pro bono consulting and volunteering or joining a nonprofit board or both. I mean, you can select as many things as you want, but literally if I select this, it's going to give me a list of all the therapists in LA where I live. I live in Orange County, but who are actively have selected that they are open to joining a nonprofit board. So I'm going to do show results. And okay, so there's 2,000 results. So that's still a little bit overwhelming, but I could then filter it even more and be like, okay, well, what I really want, okay, you know what? I want somebody who works for this, for Kaiser, or I want somebody who went to USC. There's so many different ways that you can filter it, or maybe it's people who I'm already connected with. And so just by doing that, you can actually, it's just a really helpful tool to look for the people that you actively need and are looking for. And LinkedIn just gives you a tool to be able to send them a message, right? You don't need their email, you don't need their phone number, you can send them a connection message. And if you have a profile that's set up and you look like a real person, more than likely they're more than happy to connect with you because they selected that they're open to this, right? So anyway, that's like my favorite little LinkedIn tip. Yeah, I hope that all of you do this today because we all need more board members coming down the pipeline. So that's my favorite trick. But I want to speak to Stephen and I were talking about this a little bit earlier. We're in the midst of the Great Resignation. People are leaving their jobs with the quickness. I can't even keep track of where people are at. And I'm talking not just people in the nonprofit field, but our board members, our donors, et cetera. And so LinkedIn is like a flexible Rolodex, right? You can keep in touch with people personally, even as they leave their jobs. And so let's see, I want to leave time for Q&A because I already know there's going to be a lot of great questions. So the last thing I'll do is give you some examples of content that you can do to attract other people's in, right? And yeah, real quick answer to this question. So following versus connecting is a big question. And it's something that LinkedIn doesn't do a great job of explaining. And this is a great question. So connecting, I would connect with most of the people. I would connect with these people, right? I would connect with these people here that you're in relationship with. I would follow someone like Brene Brown or like Elon Musk or someone who's just not going to connect with me back, right? Because when you follow someone, it's like a one-way connection. I see their stuff, but they don't see mine. When I connect with someone, we see each other's stuff. Each other's content shows up in each other's timeline. So that's kind of the difference. So I'm glad you asked that question because that's a good question. Okay. So I went way back in the files and pulled out some content that I created when I was actively a nonprofit nonprofit ED. And so on the left here, there was this local club that came in and did a book drive. And so I talked about it. Now, some people might say, oh, you're promoting yourself or you're promoting whatever. And again, maybe, maybe, but I think that by talking about what we're doing here, we're attracting people who didn't even know they could do this, right? So this was like the feminist empowerment movement of our local high school came in. We did a little post, and then you'll see I actually tagged Beckman High School. And what happened is the principal of Beckman High School reached out to me, and he didn't necessarily even know that this was happening because this was just a club, one of many clubs that there were existed at that high school. And so the principal of the high school reached out and said, oh my God, this is so amazing. Didn't even know you were here in our backyard. How can we work together? And that's what happens when you tag the people that you're working with. The people that they're connected with then have an opportunity to learn about what you're up to. Here's another example. There's a local, if any of you are in, well, actually Boscat has locations in Texas and all over, big restaurant chain. The founder of the restaurant chain happens to be in recovery from addiction, has an incredible story. And so she did a thing where she invited our patients over and we did like a tea. And so I tagged her and she has, thousands and thousands of followers. She's very active. People love her as they should. She's amazing. And so when we did this, we got a bunch of people reaching out and asking like, oh, I didn't know that I could share my recovery story. I'm in recovery, right? And this is a thing where there are some things that you're not going to put on LinkedIn. Many people don't put the fact that they're in recovery from addiction. I wouldn't expect them to. But when you post content that speaks to this, people do come out of the woodwork and send you direct messages about, hey, I have 5 years in recovery. I thought this was so cool that you did this. How can I get involved? Right? So that's how content can get to people that just searching for people can't, right? So some more examples. So here's a really easy tool that you can do. You can share texts with permission, do it with permission, right? So here's a friend of mine, Amy, who just literally put an example of a message she got from a investor. Now she's a for-profit, but similar kind of thing works, right? this over here on the right is a nonprofit executive director who works with in the mental health space. And so she put a text, no like identifying information from the person, nothing like that, but a text that, you know, she did. It's so crazy how much I've grown. I'm just such a different person. You really saved me. And that's just straight up social proof, right? So you don't have to spend a lot of time creating something beautiful. Like just take a screenshot of a text message and put it on there with a story of why this is so impactful, why this is so cool, how this text made you feel, you know, et cetera. Last thing, I mean, personal stories, right? That's where it's at. The personal story is where it's at. And I know this is always easier said than done because it's scary, right? There's a reason we don't go around just sharing our personal stories with everyone. And so what I always say is share from the scar versus the wound. I think Glennon Doyle said that. So share the lesson. If you're actively still healing from an experience, maybe don't share about that just yet because you're still actively in process. But for example, on the example on the left, this is an executive director of a membership organization that helps, it's all in the mental health space. And she talked about her why, which is her dad. Actually, similar here, this person talked about her dad and how he was the impetus to her going into the mental health field. This was Mara's story, you know, and talking about how she's stepping into her role as an executive director, as a leader, right? And people love cheering you on. People love cheering you on. And our stories are the greatest tool that we have to build trust. And so, yeah, if you feel comfortable, share your story. So we have 15 minutes. Rather than kind of get into this stuff, I'd love to actually answer questions. Connect versus follow. Yeah, I do know there's a thing called creator mode that LinkedIn is slowly starting to roll out. And it's just like a different kind of way you can set up your profile. If you switch over to creator mode, the automatic default is for people to follow you, but you just click on their profile. I think it's like the 3 dots or see more, and then just go find the connect button. Yeah. I love LinkedIn. I will say their like user experience could maybe be a little bit better. There's a lot of just little things that are a little wonky, but yeah, so that's all you do. That's a good question though. But so anyway, this is my contact information. Find me on LinkedIn. If I don't answer your question, I'm more than happy to answer your question on LinkedIn. Just send me a direct message, connect with me. I have a little freebie here with 14 prompts that you can download, and they're just like easy questions to answer or things to think about that will help you come up with content, help you come up with thought leadership content to really promote your mission or attract other people to your mission. I use that word promote. Anyway, and I have lastly, this is my last little bit of thing. I do have a podcast called the Campfire Circle podcast where I talk about a lot of this stuff. But that's it from me. I do want to answer questions. So I guess I'll stop my share and thank you. Thank you, Tanya. I appreciate that. Stephen, do you want to handle the Q&A piece with me?
Yeah, I'd love to. Dang. But first, that was awesome, Tanya. That was a LinkedIn clinic. Thank you so much. There was a lot of good stuff in there. I found a couple things to improve on mine, which isn't too much of a surprise, I suppose. But yeah, I hope that you get a lot of LinkedIn invitations. That might happen, Tanya, when you get log off of here. So be on the lookout for that. But yeah, that was awesome. There are some great questions in here. I know you've answered a lot of them already. One interesting question I hear about board members. Do you think board members, can they like add the nonprofits that they volunteer with, or that would be a good way to promote your nonprofit, right? Something to encourage maybe?
100%. I have that. There's so much to talk about. It's like, I could talk for like days and days and days about this. Like maybe we can put together a whole summit on LinkedIn, but I think your board members utilizing their LinkedIn and speaking to the work that you do at your organization is like the best, like the best thing you can do. Because those board members are connected to all kinds of people who probably would love to know about your mission. And so actually feeding them posts that they could post about, whether they're testimonials from your clients, whether they're whatever. I mean, you know your organization best, but feeding your board members stuff, and maybe even having a section of your board meeting where it's just devoted to, okay, now everybody, let's spend this next 10 minutes and write a post on our LinkedIn to talk about our mission and see how that goes. And then as a director of development, you can can kind of go and see who's engaging in those board members' posts and who's liking it, who's leaving comments, who's saying stuff like, wow, that's such a great organization, and work with that board member directly to facilitate a connection that can lead to a potential donor or whatever. You know what I mean?
I love that. Taking time out of the board meeting to do that. Probably the best way to get it done, right? That's great.
Yeah.
What about, Tanya, have you used any of these programs where you can like use one thing to send updates to multiple networks? I was kind of thinking what you said, that some of the networks are really they got that different vibe, like you said.
Yeah.
Is that something that maybe would hinder that if you were using one piece of software, or are there ways to get around that?
That's a really good question. Like Hootsuite, like for example, like that kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, you can certainly use Hootsuite. What I will say is, when I've done that, my posts always got less engagement. Like I feel like LinkedIn knows, and it wants you to be, well, LinkedIn definitely wants you to be spending time on their platform. They want you to be like dwelling and commenting and hanging out. So when I work with people, I really encourage them to post the post and then spend the next like 10 minutes at least on LinkedIn, engaging with other people, engaging with the people who engage with your last post, because when people engage with you, that's them raising their hand and saying, I'm interested. So go and like leave them a comment, go and engage with them, right? And so there's nothing wrong with Hootsuite. You will get more engagement if you do it manually. I know it takes more time, but it also gives you the excuse to spend time on there because content, people say content is king. Maybe engagement is queen. Maybe you can't have one without the other. And so your content is going to go that much farther if you're spending time on the platform. And really, like, let's say you put up a post, maybe engage with like 5 people who would probably really like that post, right? Tag them, send people a text message and say, hey, I just posted something. Can you go like it? Stuff like that.
I think you're right about those software. Like the networks don't seem to like them. Like they want people on the site, like you said. Yeah, that's a really good point on those. Corporate sponsors. So a lot of businesses are hanging out on LinkedIn. Of course, I think it was Debbie here who asked, or Leslie. Leslie asked, thanking corporate sponsors. That seems like a pretty good way to do it. Any tips there? Maybe get their permission if you're going to post about them, or message them directly. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a perfect way for nonprofits to use LinkedIn, is really to promote corporate sponsors, maybe leading up to an event. You could have an individual post for each one. And actually, don't be afraid to tag the people that you are working with within that organization. So you're not just tagging the company, but actually your point people within there. Because then again, LinkedIn will just do a really good job of showing that post to the people that they're connected with. And they feel good about it, right? They feel good about it. So that's a great way to not only find corporate sponsors, but to steward the ones that already exist.
Yeah, they'll probably appreciate it just for the pure PR, right? To be promoting their company in that way. That makes a lot of sense. I love this question from Rod. I was hoping somebody would ask it because I was wondering it myself. I have observed in the past maybe some resistance to having staff members just be active on social media in general, or even having the brand be on social media. And any tips for maybe getting buy-in from your boss, like, hey, we want to create a page, or we want to be more active individually because we think that will help the brand, but maybe they're thinking, social media is a time suck, or a lightning rod. Any advice for just that buy-in piece?
Such a good question. Such a good question. And really, the kind of title or name for this concept is employee advocacy. And so I would say something that I've actually done before is, if you have like a marketing firm or a marketing person on your board, or somebody who helps you with kind of outreach, or somebody that your board or that your supervisor will listen to, that has weight within the organization, maybe team up with them, and together you can do a presentation or have a conversation with that supervisor about why employee advocacy is so important. And it's not just going to help you raise more money, it's going to help you recruit new staff. It's going to help you create a culture where staff want to stay, because you're like, every time you open LinkedIn, like, you're celebrating each other, you're talking about the great work you're doing. It makes you proud to work at that organization. I understand the reservations on the other side, because people are really afraid that their staff is going to get poached. But I mean, that's just a scarcity mindset. That's a scarcity mindset. And then when you can lean into abundance, really magical things happen. you know.
Isn't it funny how the third party always has more weight than maybe people listening or working right at the org? It's tough that way, but it does work. Hashtags, is that a thing on LinkedIn, or yeah, does that
Yeah.
work?
Yeah, hashtags are a thing on LinkedIn. I would recommend having somewhere between 3 and 5 hashtags on a post. That is what the LinkedIn algorithm likes. But hashtags, so what you can do to find hashtags that work for you is just literally on the top bar, there's a search space that's where you search for everything. Think of hashtags that relate to your work, right? Maybe for me, for me in my old role, it might have been like addiction treatment or women in recovery or mental health advocacy or mental health motivation, or all of those kinds of things are just right, like off the cuff ideas. And I would take some time and search for those hashtags, like hashtag mental health. And you can see how many people follow those hashtags. And what I would say is if there's a hashtag that like so many people follow, like I'm just actually going to do like really quick, I'm going to search for hashtag mental health, because if so many people follow it, mental health, sorry, it's going to take like 2 seconds. Mental health. Okay, so mental health has 1.8 million followers. So that might not actually be the best hashtag because my post is going to get lost because so many people follow that. So maybe a better one would be like mental health for women. And so if you can find a hashtag between, like that has like between a couple hundred people that follow it, maybe maybe like 10,000, couple 20,000 people, that's a nice sweet spot. Now, I just want to caution, we're getting into some questions that are like very much like 201, if you will. If you just like create a good profile, connect with the people that you're connected to, and like talk about what you do, that's going to be great, right? Like do that first, because I say that because what I find is sometimes people try to like get into this thing of when should I post, like when's the best time to post, what hashtags should I use, but they haven't even spent the time to like get their like to do that, the more earlier stage stuff, the foundational stuff. I hope that makes sense. And you can do this hashtag search by typing in the hashtag at the top, and posts will come up that have to do with that hashtag. Just click on one and then click on the hashtag, if that makes sense. Yeah. So search for it in that top bar. Yeah. Yeah.
This
the board
is
search tip is amazing. Sorry. That
yeah,
board search tip is like a game changer. If you take one thing from this presentation, search for your new board members that way.
I love that. Dang, there's a lot of good stuff here. I want to give you the last word though, Tanya, because we're kind of coming up on the hour here. And I love that people are sharing their LinkedIn URLs. That is so fun. So keep doing that if you haven't already. I hope some people make some new connections from this. Tanya, do you want to bring up your contact slide again, just real quick, in case people can grab that? Because I want people to, maybe that could be a good way for the 201 instruction if they reach out to you.
Yeah, 100%.
There you go.
100%. There's my
And
info.
the download, what's in that download? That looks cool. LinkedIn prompts.
Yeah. So the download is literally that. It's 14 prompts to help you, because so often writer's block is our biggest enemy.
Mm.
On any given day, you're probably doing 7 things that would be great to talk about on LinkedIn, but it's just hard to think about them in the moment and why they're important. So these are prompts that you can use to really help draw that good juju, that good information out of your brain and onto paper. So like if you have writer's block, this is a really good tool to come up with some content.
Very cool. I'll download that too. That's awesome. Tanya, thanks so much for doing this. This is a lot of fun and really good information, practical for folks. So thanks for doing this.
You're so welcome. This was a joy. I love talking about LinkedIn. I really, really do. So reach out to me if you have any further questions.
Yeah, definitely. She's obviously a wealth of knowledge, an awesome person for sure. And yeah, I'm just looking at some of these LinkedIn profiles. You all are in pretty good shape. I think she'll bring you the extra mile here, and you have some really shining profiles. So very cool to see. Thanks to all of you also for hanging out and not watching basketball and doing this instead of March Madness. It's always fun to see a full room. We are going to send out the slides and the recording just as soon as we can here. You should have them by the weekend. So if you want to, review the content or share it with a friend, you will definitely be able to do that. Just be on the lookout for an email from me and Bloomerang. And hopefully we'll see you on our next session. We've got a lot of awesome sessions coming up over the next several weeks and months, every single Thursday afternoon. If you're here, you will get an invite to that for sure. So we will call it a day there. Thanks again to Tanya. Thanks to all of you for hanging out. And I hope you have a good rest of your Thursday. Have a good weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy out there. We need all of you out there doing good work. And we will talk to you again soon. Bye now.
Bye, everyone.